Welcome everyone to the Inside Word. My name is Lachlan McLean from Beer Cartel, Australia's #1 craft beer retailer. For episode 9, I chat to Beer Cartel co-founder and director Richard Kelsey about the annual craft beer survey. We discuss the history of the survey and where it came from, the results of previous years, the huge benefits this data gives breweries and consumers, and much, much more. Thanks for joining me today, Rich.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
So we're here today to talk about the Australian Craft Beer Survey. Before we get into the background of it and the history of it and where it came from, I know the current one is out at the moment. How's it been going?
Yeah, so it's been going great. We've hit just over 18,000 people that have taken part so far. So last year we had 18,000 people do it in total. And at the moment we're having about 5,000 new people each week take part in the survey.
Awesome. So how many do you hope to get to by the end of it?
So it would be great to get over 20,000 this year. So it's one of those things you kind of do a bit of a wait and see. You never know what it's going to be like until it all goes live and you go from there.
And the breweries are all supporting it and getting it out there?
Yeah, so one of the key things that we do each year is try and get as much industry support as possible. And as always, they've been hugely supportive. So thanks to everyone so far that's given it a bit of a nudge to their customer base. And hopefully we get a few more this week.
So it's into its 4th year.
Yep.
Where did it come from? Where did the inspiration come from?
So I'll give you a really long version of it. So going right back to my university days back in New Zealand, circa 2002. One of the subjects I did at university was market research, and I did really well in it. I was the first one that I got kind of top grades and actually topped the class.
Wow, there we go.
So I moved to Australia in about 2004, 2005. But before I did that, I actually worked for a local brewery in New Zealand and did a research project for them, and I got paid in great beer. They made amazing beer. Unfortunately, the brewery, Limburg Brewery, is not around anymore, but the head brewer there is now part of Emerson's down in Dunedin.
Oh, yeah.
So I came over to Australia and then got a career in market research. And that's when I met Jeff Hewins, my business partner, who founded the business with me. So we worked in market research. We did all sorts of projects. I ended up moving companies partway along my sort of career, and then did some work with the likes of Lion Nathan. So I helped do research on 150 Lashes when that was about to be launched. So Jeff and I had talked about starting a business, and we both had a really big love of beer, and so that's how Beer Cartel got started. And then I was always reflecting on how we could actually do something that would be quite good for the industry, and so I always thought that doing a sort of research survey would be kind of cool. But I couldn't ever kind of work out how it would actually be of use to everyone in the industry. And then one year I was part of this sort of business building program, and it hit on me that maybe what we'd do is actually make everything public and get everyone in the industry to try and get behind it. And if we did that, what we're doing is creating something that's going to help everyone that's within the industry.
And you kind of launched that in 2016.
Yep.
How did it go in the first year?
Yeah, so it went a lot better than I kind of expected. I don't know what I was kind of aiming for at the start, but we had 6,500 people take part in the survey. And it instantly gave me a kind of thought that we might be onto something here. Followed it up the next year, we had 17,000 people take part in 2017. Then 18,000 last year, and hopefully
a bit more this year.
Exactly.
The breweries obviously are the major driving behind the survey in terms of getting all the people to do it. What's the benefit to them, and why should they get behind it?
Yeah, so what we do is because we put everything goes back to the industry. So we have our public report that we release on our website, and that is for anyone, everyone to see it. Outside of that, what we also do is create this industry report, and that's we take the findings from the research and we actually then add in some insights and to say, hey, this is how it could actually benefit your business, or have a think about this when you're doing things. So one example is can pack sizes. So last year we had a big focus on limited releases and what sort of vessel size people want those in. And from that, one of the big findings was people were after the smaller size vessels. So straight away that's something that breweries can think about and say, okay, going forward, when I'm doing my next lot of beer releases, then going for the smaller size format could definitely assist.
And going through the years, so we've got 3 completed reports.
Yep.
Each of them have a different focus.
Yeah, so what we do is the idea behind the survey and why we created it was because breweries and everyone else that operates within the industry, that they don't have money to do research themselves. So everyone gets told that research is a really good idea, but they've got no idea where to start. They've got no idea or it just costs a heap to
yeah, it costs a lot of money, a lot of time.
So back, like a simple project when I was in market research full time cost like $30,000. So it costs an absolute bucket load. And so what we want to do is create something that each year we're just building on knowledge. So we're not repeating the same thing over and over again, but we do have kind of measurements that say, okay, how's things trending? But the idea is to build on the knowledge base so that we're creating all this knowledge that people can benefit from going forward.
And what have been those focus areas? Like what have we taken out of like the past 3 surveys?
Are you talking about just
what are some of the major
for each year?
Yeah, what have been some of the major takeaways from those years?
Yeah, so we've over time had quite a focus on independence and what people think about independence. We actually, I think it was in 2017, put forward a question that said, imagine there was a seal that could be used to identify an independently owned beer. And this was before
the seal came out.
Before the seal came out.
Yeah, right.
It was before the US released their seal. It was before the UK released their seal. So we got kind of a bit lucky there, I guess, in foreseeing the future. But yeah, so that was really interesting. And just seeing what that means to people and how things have changed over time. So if you go back to, what was it, in 2018, we had the buyouts of Pirate Life, Four Pines and Feral. And one of the big things there, so each year we look at what is the best brewery, or what do people think are the best breweries in Australia. So 2016 we started with Feral number 1, Pirate Life number 2. 2017 it was Pirate Life number 1, Feral number 2. And then 2018 after the buyouts it changed so that Bolter was now number 1.
So yeah, the independence has really come through, and the seal, I guess, is working.
The seal, yeah, it seems to be working. So we'll know a bit more about that come the results for this year's survey. So when we looked at the seal last year, it was kind of saying, okay, what impact will it have on your future purchases? This year we'll be able to say what impact has it had so far.
And you mentioned earlier that about pack formats and can sizes and bottle sizes. That's been a major focus, I think, last year or 2 years before. What was the takeouts from that?
So each year we do look at preference for cans versus bottles, and it has been a changing thing over time. So when we first started out, bottles were strongly preferred, but it's kind of reflective of what we're seeing. Like the products that we're getting in our store it's becoming a lot more skewed now to cans, and so I think you're going to keep seeing that preference shift, and it could be quite dramatic this year.
I guess on the whole pack formats and the craft beer consumer, one of the questions I know that was in it I did this year's, and I think it's been in last year's, was the craft beer spend.
Yep.
Has that changed over time? Have we noticed that are people spending more, or has it kind of just been consistent?
No, it's been relatively consistent. So a lot of the measures that we do have, so we look at what's the most consumed style. We look at things like gender splits. So are there more males, more females coming into the industry, and that they've all been relatively static. I think the spend on average is around about $58 a week, something along those lines, maybe $68. I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, across a lot of things, things have stayed quite consistent. So I guess one of the big changes has been that sort of preference, so bottles versus cans, but across things like favourite style, most consumed style, they're all pretty consistent so far.
What was the favourite style in most consumed style?
So most consumed style, pale ale, probably unsurprising.
Yep.
So yeah, basically every brewery has a pale ale, so as you'd guess that's number one. And favourite style, I think it was last year was about 31% was IPA, and then pale ale was number two.
Has that changed over the 3-4 years, or is it just that the people that kind of move on from those styles are being replaced by the ever-growing consumer base?
It's been relatively consistent across that time. It hasn't had any major changes. This year we actually added in a separate style category, just being New England IPAs.
Let's see how that goes.
I mean, because as we know, there's been a lot of growth in that over the last few years, and it's one that everyone sort of seems to bring out a limited release of.
On the 2018 survey,
yep.
I know one of the major focus points was the CDS, or the Container Deposit Scheme, specifically in New South Wales. But I know that's obviously been expanded to a lot of the other states now. What were the results for that, and how did consumers kind of perceive the CDS?
Yeah, so overall there's very few people in New South Wales that are actually doing anything around the Container Deposit Scheme. So in New South Wales, you've got these points where you take your recyclables to, and you can take them there and you get some kind of compensation for them. So I think it's around about 5 cents a can, something along those lines. And then you get a docket that you can then, I think, get credited to your PayPal account,
yep.
or you can spend at certain locations. But yeah, when we looked at it, the majority of New South Wales people just aren't doing it. So there's curbside recycling, and that goes really well. So for the tiny amount that you'll get from spending your time to grab all your empties, do once a week a trip down to the container deposit point, and then trying to put them into the machine and then get some in return, people just don't bother with it.
Yeah, I know. With me, I live in Artarmon, and the nearest one, on Sydney's North Shore, and the nearest one to me is in the Macquarie Centre, which is probably 25-minute drive at the best. And I just don't think people are willing to, you spend more in petrol than you're going to get back. But in South Australia, it's been really successful there. Why do you think it's so much more successful there?
I think it was because they started it before they had a curbside recycling scheme. And I'm not even 100% sure that they have one now. But yeah, it's because of that, it just became an ingrained behaviour. Whereas here, you're starting off with something new that we know that people generally just have less and less time in their days and their lives. So to try and get them to do something that's out of their standard day makes it tougher and tougher.
If you are looking for new beers or an old favourite, be sure to check out the Beer Cartel website at www.beercartel.com.au. If you haven't completed the survey yet, be sure to do so, and you'll go into the running to win $500 of amazing craft beer. Just hit the link in the bio. So we've talked about, the last few years, and I guess what we took out of it, and the questions that were asked, and the answers that we got. But this year's 2019 survey, what's the focus area behind it?
So yeah, we've got a few different areas. One, we sat down with the IBA, so the Independent Brewers Association, and had a chat with them. Spoke to Jamie Cook there, who's the head of it, and just wanted to understand what areas they'd like to do. So for them, it was understanding better what people think independent beer means to them. So they take some measures that are actually used in a survey in the UK for the UK Independent Brewers Association, and so we've added that in for this year's one. Alongside that, we had to have a focus on just the constant array of new beers that are coming onto the market. So what do people think of it? Is it a positive or is it a negative? Is it something that's helping the industry, or could it impact it long term? So that's a couple of areas. Outside of that, looking at pack preferences, so 4 and 6 packs for 4 versus 6 packs, and a case of 16 versus a case of 24. So we know that there are different brewers that have these different case formats. A lot of people aren't necessarily using any science when they kind of go with a format. So we know that, say, for instance, Bolter has a case of 16, whereas if you were to buy like a case of Little Creatures, it's going to be a case of 24. So is there anything around that breweries can think about? Outside of that, we also have what makes a great beer festival. So there's a lot of beer festivals out there, and just understanding how people can make a great beer festival.
You talked about the whole pack formats and the 4s and the 6 packs, the 16s and the 24s. Has there been any data in the previous, what we've been doing does it match what we kind of think, or does it has there been some surprises in all the results that we're doing? But yeah, I guess most people kind of have an idea of what they think should be correct. Does the data usually back that up, or has there been some, surprises?
Yeah, normally that it's been pretty reflective of what we would estimate. But yeah, I mean, the great thing is that you've got 18,000 responses behind you to kind of validate it.
It is a decent sample size.
So yeah, I mean, in a standard market research survey, you probably have around about 1,000 people that take part in the survey. And that's used just globally, and that's very consistent. So if you look at political surveys, often they have like a sample of 1,000 people. So we've got 18 times that in sample size. And yeah, it does definitely help. I mean, one thing that did surprise me when we first did it back in 2016, and this was in part because we don't see it in our store, was just the amount of females that were craft beer consumers. So when you think about the overall craft beer buyer, 80% are male, 20% are female. And that surprised me. So 1 in 5 shoppers are female.
It's definitely a growth area, and I think it's something that more effort should be put into.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And if you go to, so while we aren't necessarily always seeing 1 in 5 shoppers being female, if you go to a bar or go to a brewery, then you'll actually see that's where you've got females drinking beer. There's
definitely a lot of kudos to all the high-end people in the industry and all the females working in the industry, from Two Birds to Pink Boots, to all the people that get around all that stuff. There's definitely massive kudos to everyone that does all the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. It's brilliant that we can now see female role models, because it means that it does provide something that people can look forward to and say, I want to be like that person. Type thing. So yeah, hopefully female proportion over time grows even further.
You mentioned at the top of the podcast the amount of effort that goes into producing a survey and the market research. You said that the kind of minimum spend for one of these surveys for, say, 1,000 people is $30,000.
Yeah.
And obviously that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do it. Why do we do it? Why does Beer Cartel do it? What's the benefit to us?
Yeah, so I mean,
to you?
So there's a couple of things. We've always wanted to give back to the industry. So the industry has been so great to us. I mean, we started back in 2009. This is going to be our 10th year at the end of this year. And so we've always wanted to give back to those that have supported us and helped us on our journey. So that's part of it. And the other thing is as a business, we've always had a outlook on wanting to help be educators. So when people get into craft beer, they go on a journey. So you start with, it can be something as basic as James Squire 150 Lashes or a Cooper's Pale Ale, and you seem what we see is people go on a journey and they evolve over time. And they go, I really like this. Now I want to learn a bit more about it. And so we've always wanted to be kind of the facilitator of that. And so it's in part why we do the survey. It's in part why you do the podcast. We've also got our Facebook group. So all of those things we see as helping people on their craft beer journey.
Absolutely. So we're in our 4th year this year. It's been incredibly successful, and that has actually led to a number of awards for Beer Cartel and yourself. What were they?
Yeah, so the first award, I think, was at the back end of 2017, and it was a global award from the website platform that we were on, and it was a cash award too. So we won $3,000 for the best marketing innovation globally on that e-commerce platform. So I think we're up against 80,000, or there's 60 or 80,000 stores on the platform, and we managed to clean sweep it there. Then last year we went pretty well. So we won within the online retail space. They have the Online Retail Industry Awards called the Aureas. And each year you see the same businesses take out every single award. So Booktopia in Australia is really big. Kogan takes out a lot of awards. Appliances Online. If you're into fashion, Showpo is a big winner every year. And so we're against businesses that are earning tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And we took out best marketing there as well. Which was fantastic. And then we won last year at the Australian Retail Awards. We won Best Marketing, I think it was Best Marketing Innovation again. And we're finalist at the National Retail Awards this year for the same thing.
I remember there was a good period there. You have your awards season in Hollywood and whatnot, and I think there was a good month or so there where I think you were going away to Melbourne or wherever for an awards every couple of weeks, and coming back with something. So yeah, it obviously does really well. I was kind of pressing you for how this one's going. Is there any early results?
So I always hold fire on everything until we get the full data. I don't want to give anything away too early, so it's going to be a bit of a watch this space until all the results until all the data's been collected and we've looked through it thoroughly.
On that, with the results, when can we expect them?
So typically we do it end of August. And then at the same time we draw the prize for $500 to spend on craft beer, which is basically anyone that completes the survey goes into the draw to do that. Yeah,
so we talked about why breweries should do it. We talked about why we do it, but from the consumer point, why should they do it?
Yeah, so I mean, number one is everyone that takes part, you're helping the industry. So you're providing your thoughts and your feedback on how you think and operate. That helps the industry better understand who its consumers are. And that's a fantastic thing, and I've got to say a huge thanks to everyone that takes part in it each year. Outside of that, we put the results on our website so that everyone can see them, everyone can read them, digest, think about them, talk about them. So we see within the Facebook groups each year after the results are released that there's a lot of discussion about them. And the final thing is, you go into the draw to win $500 to spend on great craft beer.
I think, for a consumer point, the craft beer industry in Australia has changed massively in the last, I'll say 5 years, but as things every year it kind of ramps up and changes again, and the information that you get from the survey only kind of helps that, but also kind of evolves it in the way that the consumers kind of want it to go. And I think the industry will only grow with it. The survey, like I said, 4 years now, where can we see it going? What's the plans for it?
So it's just each year to continue to learn, and that's what it's all about. So the more knowledge we can get to share amongst the industry, the better off everyone is. So each year what we do is we actually go out to the industry and say, help us, give us any problems, any ideas that you'd like to learn more about, and from that we then construct the questions. So it's an evolving beast. what it looked like in 2016 is going to be completely different to what it's like in 2026.
With the ever-growing craft beer base, I think you can probably tell me the numbers better of how many people drink craft beer in Australia now. 6%.
Yeah, around about that.
6%.
Yeah.
That's growing every year. So obviously, as that grows, the results from the craft beer survey and the number of people doing it will grow. Have you got a number in your head that you'd like to hit at all eventually?
Long term?
Long term?
No, I kind of keep it open. One thing we saw last year was that it was actually quite hard to increase from 17 to 18,000 because Facebook, which is often the medium that the survey gets promoted, that they made it much harder for businesses to get visibility on their posts. So, basically, the growth of the survey can be driven by just getting it publicised on the social media, and then as the other thing is just being shared through people's email databases. So as those grow over time, then more and more will be sharing it and more completing it, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. For people out there listening, the survey will be open for another week or so.
Yep.
So if you haven't done it, go find the link on our Facebook page, I'm sure there's breweries that have shared it as well. If you haven't done it yet, like I said, you can go into the draw to win $500 worth of craft beer. It's a fantastic prize every year. But thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see the results.
Thank you for having me.
The annual Australian Craft Beer Survey has become the industry standard for market research and consumer insights. If you haven't yet completed it, be sure to do so and ensure that the craft beer industry continues to go from strength to strength. Once again, thank you so much to Richard for joining me today, and if you have any questions, please let us know on our Facebook group, Beer Cartel's Craft Beer Collective. If you'd like to continue to stay up to date with the latest from the craft beer industry, please hit subscribe at either iTunes Podcast, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.